And we are live. Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is a Thursday night, which means it is the Rugby Fan Forum, and we are basically just over a week. I mean, tomorrow, the week tomorrow is the World Cup. It is finally basically here. In a week's time, we get to say it really is finally here. And but we've got a lot to talk about before we get to next weekend because we're going to talk a little bit about last weekend, and you've got very happy Springbok panel on here tonight after last week's absolutely incredible result. I am joined by Chris and Wes, who you've seen a lot before, and then making his fan forum debut is Mr. Dan Scholz. Though he is UK based these days, but still, as I'm sure, as passionate about sport as all. Chaps, are we all well?
Thanks, Stevie.
Buzzing, Stevie.
Right. So, to everybody else in the comments, first of all, please do smash like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you are new. First of all, a big shout out to BoyleSports, who are officially powering the stream. They are our official betting partners. And Chris has a couple of leans and a recap from last weekend for the season record. So, first things first, before we even talk any about rugby, big shout out to BoyleSports, who are powering the stream. Please do go and check the description. There is a link there to BoyleSports. Go and sign up. They've currently got a couple of promotions, including a 50 rand extra bet for during the World Cup. If you bet a stake of 250 more on any sort of rugby, you'll get a 50 rand extra bet during the World Cup after each round of the World Cup. So they're running that promotion at the moment. So if you're going to get yourself signed up for BoyleSports, then you'll be able to go and make use of that promo. So link in the description, get yourself a BoyleSports account. And Chris is going to be doing, obviously, a betting segment every single fan forum during the World Cup. He also has a dedicated betting show, which does return tomorrow. Looking forward to seeing what you're going to cook up there, Chris. So, yeah, in terms of the order of the show, we're going to be doing a bit of a recap of last weekend. We're going to be looking at some of the results. We're going to be looking at the fact that has last weekend suddenly made the Boks potential World Cup favorites or put themselves amongst the World Cup favorites. We were talking a little bit about England and the fact that Fiji suddenly going into the World Cup topping the highest ranked team in their group over Australia and Wales, whether England have got any chance during the World Cup. And then we were talking a little about the World Cup next week as well. A couple of bit of news in terms of the Scott Barrett sighting. As well as his injury, but reports from around the place as well. So last to come up, we've got a poll running in the comments as well. We'll be asking you who do you think the World Cup favorites are, and a very interesting poll at the moment. South Africa is currently leading. We've got France, South Africa, New Zealand, and as your option, top four ranked sides. But let's get to it, and I'm going to go to the person who, in case you missed it last week, was at Twickenham. Chris, you were in probably one of the best places to be able to watch the demolition of the Boks versus the All Blacks. Just try and sum up that evening.
I can't, Stevie. Like I said, barring that don't have kids, it was the best night of my life, and I'm not exaggerating. I've been to many few New Zealand All Black games in Newlands, which are great, but I just it was at Twickenham, 80,000 people. We don't get 80,000. Well, I haven't been to a rugby crowd with 80,000. Say 90% Bok fans, and yeah, the game started, and it's, as you guys noticed, it spent 20 minutes in the New Zealand 22. We weren't scoring, but we could already see we were piling on the pressure, which was nice to see. Even that pressure for 20 minutes was just enjoyable. Even though we weren't scoring, some of us were saying, if we don't score now, New Zealand's going to turn this over any moment now. Go score on the other side, and we're on the back foot already. And that just never happened. Never happened through the whole game, and Boks totally dominated, and it just became clearer and clearer that New Zealand were just not getting into the game, and the Boks just did the typical when they're playing like that, and somehow kept the pressure obviously started to get to New Zealand, and the crowd started getting up and up because it was mainly South African crowd. No one could believe what they were seeing. It was an amazing experience. It's very, like you said, it's so hard not to get too ahead of ourselves and so excited, but I think I was enjoying the moment. I knew it was a friendly, but I've never seen the All Blacks being dominated by any team, and us. They've been doing that to us for the last 30 years in the professional era. I enjoyed that moment. Yes, it wasn't a World Cup pool match or quarterfinal or final, but it was a moment that I will never forget. So that was even in the gantry, the best spot in the house. Then the media, the press conference afterwards, sitting right in front of Fozzie and Sam Kane there, and getting a question into Jacques. It was an amazing night around. So thanks to you guys, BoyleSports, but for that opportunity. And can't no words. Just hopefully we can take that form, into the World Cup proper. Hey.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. I think, yes, you mentioned that, we've never seen us dominate the All Blacks like that. And that was my biggest sort of takeaway is, we've beaten the All Blacks before. We've sometimes had more convincing wins than others, but I don't think we've ever looked against the All Blacks just like never ever losing, where it just wasn't even a possibility. How do we gauge that level of performance? I mean, for me, it's the best performance I've seen since the 2019 World Cup final. It's come at a good time going into the World Cup. But how much can we read into it, and how much? I mean, do we have license to be a bit excited about it after that result?
Yeah, I don't want to make myself public enemy number one in South Africa and say no, we shouldn't get excited. I think we would really enjoy this result in the moment, and I think all the Bok fans did. I'm sure everyone had just an amazing weekend because, as you guys have said, I mean, I've never seen any team dominate and handle the All Blacks like that, and let alone be the Boks. I just kept feeling throughout the whole game. I just thought, okay, any minute now, New Zealand are gonna turn on, they're gonna show up, and then it's gonna be game on. But it just never happened, and we did so well to keep turning the screws and keep the pressure. So that for me was the most impressive thing, is that we showed up to play. And I think that's what was missing in New Zealand when we played earlier this year, is that we got smacked in the mouth. New Zealand showed up to play in that first game. We were shell shocked, but the difference was that we then turned up. We then made, we sort of realized, we went, okay, fine, you got me there with that sort of cheap jab. I'm now here to fight and play, and we sort of fought back. New Zealand just didn't seem able to kick into that second gear, which was quite stunning for me. In terms of reading into it, I was just a little throwback, I think, to last week's fan forum where I said, if we beat the All Blacks by 100, it doesn't mean we've won the World Cup. I still call for a little bit of caution. I think I'd rather win and beat the All Blacks and go in with a good bit of momentum and a bit of chaos, because potentially they could be the side we face in the quarterfinals. So it's always good to have that, it's a new game, it's a new day, it's a new ball. But remember the last time we played, we're gonna try to do that again. So I'm feeling pretty good, but cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I think we were a little bit live to be cautiously optimistic. I think the big thing is that we've seen our game come together at parts over the last few years, but I just don't think we've ever seen a full 80-minute performance where we just put very few feet wrong. Scotty, it's now an interesting time to be peaking in inverted commas, and that's what sort of everyone's sort of sitting there saying. It's all about peaking at the right time. And some people even go as far to say as maybe we actually have peaked, and maybe we won't be able to replicate, what we did last week during the World Cup. But this is a side that has been under quite a lot of pressure in the last few weeks, which is probably a bit unfair considering that we've actually ended up winning 5 out of 6 games going into the World Cup. But some of the performances weren't always as dominant or maybe as polished as we'd like. So, do you think this performance has been building in terms of getting a lot of things wrong in the last month or two? Do you get the sort of sense that we are now going into the World Cup playing how we want to be in a really good position?
I like what you said there, Stevie. I think not only this last year, but in the last couple of years, we haven't really known what to expect from the Bok team. On the day, the starting 15, even 23 changes so much. And, one day we rock up, the next we don't. We saw what happened, as Wes alluded to, in the first half of that New Zealand game in New Zealand. And, no one just wanted to... You get nervous around the All Blacks because you're not sure when they're going to pitch up. But seeing an 80-minute performance, and I think, as you said, 5 of the last 6 games, you could say maybe one dropped half of rugby. Otherwise, it's been very assertive and pretty insane just what we're looking at. In terms of, have we gotten ahead of ourselves? Have we peaked too early? I guess time will tell. I think the Boks aren't renowned for, being too big-headed, and as everyone alludes to, is the classic Japan match and how that'll teach us lessons in the future. And hopefully this is something that we won't be complacent about going into Scotland, because they are by no means any write-off, and the talent that they are possessing and the amount of confidence that they should be taking into this World Cup is equal to what we are. So I think it's going to be an incredible group to watch unfold, and I actually think it's going to be decided on points difference, at least per second.
Yeah, it's a big call. I think on that whole sort of points difference thing. And look, the Boks have been saying for well over a month now. I think it was in July Talking was very, very happy. He said Scotland's our biggest game in the group. He said, yes, there's Ireland, but he said Scotland's our game. He said if we beat Scotland, that gives us breathing room. It means we can afford to lose to Ireland and still go through. It means we can afford to slip up in inverted commas somewhere during the group stage and still sort of go through. Because at the end of the day, considering that we're most likely to play either France or New Zealand, finishing 1 or 2 doesn't really matter. To the Boks, apart from maybe sort of momentum and the whole thing. But I mean, we are the only side that have lost a game in the group stage and gone on to win the World Cup. So we also be sitting there saying, well, we don't mind doing it because we've done it before. I want to talk a little bit about very specifically and some of the criticism towards the Boks, and that this is something that a lot of foreign press have been sort of throwing around, and we had quite Reza was very hectic in the WhatsApp group about it and took a lot of offense about it. Chris, the 7-1 split. I mean, you watched as a bunch of World Cup winners walked off the field, and an entire new pack, bar Peter Steph, the toy, walked onto the field. I mean, it was one of the most mental things to watch when there was that frame when they moved towards, they looked at the bench, and you looked at the players we had just taken off, sitting next to Rassie Erasmus, and yet you still had, an Arcus Neyman on the pitch. You still had Kwaka Smith, who was doing what Kwaka Smith does best. You still had Trevor Nikani on the bench, Bongi Benami, Oxen Chair. We still had quality forwards. A lot of people have come out and said that, that we are abusing the concept of the bench, that we're misusing it, and that it's not acceptable and stuff. Drew Mitchell actually came out and he said, what's the thing? Drew Mitchell came out and said, the only reason we're talking about this is because it works. He says, at the end of the day, if it backfired, nobody would have had an issue with it. He says, other teams' responsibility is to not complain about it, but try and find a way to nullify it. Chris, what was your what's the take on the 7-1 split? I mean, it's a hell of a risky to do one, for example.
It was pretty weird because again, I had got the game early. I was watching the warm-ups, and Billy was warming up, Pollard was warming up, and that was a late call. So a lot of us even were watching, what the hell has Billy pulled up, or what's going on here, And I also just wonder if that put something in the All Blacks' head, they maybe thought, are we taking the piss here? Are we disrespecting them? Are they not? Could have done, why they came out flat. But yeah, it was obviously lots of murmurs, what's going on, and then all that domination said, then this whole pack comes on, we continue to dominate, and I couldn't keep my eyes off Reinach on the wing on my side of the field, playing an absolute blinder in the wing there because you can play any position on the park. So it was just unreal to say. Unreal, no, but it was the whole match was, and I'm being honest, we are seeing lots of people were in shock. No one could actually quite work out what the hell was going on down there. Springboks fucking messing around. But we hammer in this All Black team. You can't get into the game.
Yeah, that's the thing. You can't even hate it because it was so effective. I mean, we just literally put on a brand new pack, and said, off we go.
And nothing. Okay, look, they were down to 14. We have to caveat that. I mean, that was obviously didn't make it a bit easier. It was just as you guys saw. It was all round. They were, even live, there was just never a point in the game that it looked like the All Blacks were in it. Just physicality, everything. And talking about Peter Steph, he stood out as well. Man, that guy is back to his top form. I saw him just covering ground, making tackles. Absolute Trojan, that guy. Had a great game. Obviously, DW was busy. He got man of the match. Yeah, so it was just, I was lucky to be the guys. Went to chat to Tina Stelport and Justin Marshall. And it was 14-0 at halftime, right? I said to Marsh, geez, 14-0 against, because we hardly ever 14-0 up anyway against the All Blacks, any time, never mind what the end score was. And I said to him, what do you reckon? The All Blacks, and he even said, so All Blacks are just not in this game. Springboks should be 30 points up already. It's just, was just bizarre. That was just awesome. But I think again it was a warm up. Wales, who played their C team, it's a whole different ball game going into the World Cup. But we can read and get excited, but it's a completely different kettle of fish when you get into the World Cup proper. So
yeah, where's the 7-1 split? What's the chat?
I'm really lost for words when it comes to the spirit of the game and abusing the system and all this. Just fucking nonsense, really. Actually, like it's the same rules for everyone. Sorry, YouTube, but it's the same rules for everyone. Anyone can go and put 8 forwards, or 7 forwards, or 1 forward. Like, you've just got to have faith in your team. And as you guys said, it's a massive risk, because what if a couple backs go down or something happens like that, then you are left high and dry. But to get that reward, to be able to put on 7 new forwards and have a fresh pack, it's a big payoff, but you've got to have an associated risk. I don't really, we're obviously a punditry show and we comment, we've got to talk about things, but for me, I don't really want to talk about the abusing the system too much, because I think it's a crap statement, and I don't really want to give too much more airtime to it. Like, just beat us, do the same thing and beat us. Then if we're abusing it, if it's such a winning card, everyone do it.
Well, Eddie Jones threatened earlier. Early in the season, he said they spoke about could you be looking at a 6-2 split, and he said I reckon there could be a 7-1 split on the cards. Yeah, he said we could really load the card, and everybody laughed about it and said, oh, Eddie Jones is thinking, and then the Box do it, and then when the Box do it, all of a sudden everybody has a meltdown about it.
But I think it was Matt Williams. I think, look, I hear the point about the injury thing. It makes sense. I remember there was a time in rugby when people were playing out of position, and there's a valid point to that. But that's not the point. That's not the remit. That's not the caveat that there must be these certain players.
There has to be a front row. That's it. There has to be a front row. That's your only conditions. You have to have a front row.
And that was because of the specialist.
Yeah,
that is a specialist position. The rest is. I mean, no, it's been like that for you. These are it's just crying. It's salty and it's delicious. They can keep crying.
It's delicious. Yeah. No, I think that's it. I think
it's backfired against us before, right? Like we've had to keep Quagga Smith on the wing, but you're seeing international teams pick these like generalist players for a reason, because they want to be malleable and adaptive to what goes on in the game. We happen to be putting 7 of our players who are predominantly specialist front rowers, and hoping, even though with the 7-1 split we still didn't have a replacement for our winger. You know what I mean? We could have replaced our scrum half with our scrum half, but we still chose not to. So even with the 7-1 split, our one backline player we're not even putting in the right position. So we're a team that has pioneered the emphasis on generalism, particularly in the forwards, obviously. But you can see the value that someone like Franco Mostert, Peter Steph-Toy, Damien Willemse, Pollard, these guys play multiple positions now. Caden Moody, these guys are tested and used in different ways, and no one really knows how to predict how that's happening. And it gives you the ability to change your game plan also mid-game because of that. And it's up to the rest of the world to decide how they want to go about doing that. If they want to stick to, their specialist number 5 jumper, by all means, win all your lineouts, but then don't come complaining if your specialist jumper is losing to our flank / jumper.
I also think we probably shouldn't be surprised about it, because versatility's been the name of the game since Rossi and Jacques have taken over, and they've always been very happy to. Franco Moss had never played with the number 7 jersey before 2021 in the British Lions series, and all of a sudden PSF Toy gets injured, he throws the number 7 on, and all of a sudden we've got this, and especially that year he was absolutely world class in that position. We've seen that a Quagga Smith can play. He makes everybody always asks him about if he's ready to play on the wing, and he says, well, he actually debuted there when he was at the Lions. He's actually a back line converted into a forward. So and they've always looked at those players, which is why Dane Williams is so valuable, which is why they've been happy to play Jesse Creel on the wing at outside centre, and they've looked at Damien Delendi at outside centre as well. Caden Moody now being shifted, and there are certain players who I think do get left out and overlooked because they're just not versatile enough to be in a Springbok system where fluidity is key. Chris.
Yeah, Stevie was saying, remember we've been saying through the year, and like you called it, even we actually had been winning, but we had kept these different teams coming out every week. And even picking up in the press conference with Jacques, this was a deliberate plan. We've literally got a squad of 33 players, proper 33 squad, anyone in and out. And he's taken the rest. He's played these guys. He's changed the team up, so they've all had a feel and played in the system. So it looks like that's maybe he's just gotten that's perfect. it seemed a bit like, why are you not just playing your strongest and give them time on the field and momentum? But it looks like the method and the madness is now come to fruition. It looks like it's peaking at the right time, right? And I also saw a funny tweet. I don't know if you saw it. Some guy wrote, "Next up, we're going to put our 3 scrum offs on the field and then kick them into oblivion in the second half."
Don't put it past them. There's one thing about this coaching staff is that first of all, they're not scared to experiment, and they're very happy to do all the bold and strange decisions and face any criticism that comes towards them. I actually want to talk about the makeup of what eventually was a 7-1 split, but a 6-2 split, because I think what we saw this past weekend was a return to having 2 locks on the bench, for example. And I mean, I think Jean Klein has been such a good addition to the side. I think that he's really been a bit of I wouldn't say a miracle player, but you know, a situation which has worked out so well. And somebody made a fantastic point. They said, you know, it's not just obviously from the old Springbok proverb of F them up physically. Obviously, when a Jean Klein and Arceus name and all these guys come onto the park and just start hammering them, but they were saying that, you know, for 45 minutes, you had Franco Mostert, who is happy to go up and compete in the line-out. He's a really good line-out jumper. You've got Peter Steph-Toy, he's a really good line-out jumper. You've got players who, you know, you've got Dwayne Fumune and Ebert Etzebeth who can impose themselves on the game. They're going to get over the game line. Siak is going to get over the game line. You know, Malcolm Marks, who carries really well. And then you had players coming off the bench, and not even just from a player personnel perspective, but in terms of roles, you know, we had players coming off the bench who can carry well. You know, we had players who came off the bench. I mean, Jean Klein is competing brilliantly at the front of the line. He started plenty of ball across the season. So it's interesting how the 6-2 split, not so much just, and now the 7-1 split, not just so much from we're going to physically dominate them and continue to dominate them, but they've just gotten it so right with, you know, there's going to be fetchers here, there's going to be, you know, ball carriers here, there's going to be good line jumpers, there's going to be, you know, players who go under the high ball and stuff like that. And I think the roles for me was quite impressive is the fact that they managed to find a way to make sure that they've got 10 things they want to make sure are covered across the park in terms of aspects of the game, and they've got players and combinations which always get that right. Where's, you know, how important do you think that part is? You know, because I think sometimes we get lost in and this is what I've always loved about the Springbok management. For me, Arceus Snyman is one of the best number 5s in the world on this day in terms of just, you know, we all know his ball carrying ability. He's a physical absolute monster. His off-floor game, etc., etc. But this Springboks staff have never gone and said, our starting 15 is as easy as going, who's our best loose head, who's our best tight head, who's our best hooker, and going 1 through to 15. They've always liked combinations and making sure that there are different combos across the thing. How important do you think that part is of the game, and how much do you think we're actually getting it right at the moment?
Yeah, I think for me, what the Boks have done away with is a strongest 15 mentality. I think we've stopped looking at it as a strongest 15. We're looking at it as we've got these 23 players. So we pick our, you know, arguably our strongest 23 or our experimental 23. But let's say we're going into the World Cup final, right? I think, you know, the biggest game, I don't think we pick our strongest 15 to start for that very reason. I think we'll pick our strongest 23. And then within that, as you said, they'll pair up the combination. So you might have someone who you could say, okay, arguably they're a better jumper or fetcher or tackler or kicker, but they're coming off on the bench, not because they're not as good as the Oak, but because they pair well better with this other person, or, you know, coming on off that impact player, that bomb squad we've seen. So yeah, for me, you know, we spoke about the coaching staff, and I think, as you said, they're very happy and willing and brave to go out there and try something new. And pioneer stuff, and the whole world will throw its arms up first, but then you'll see other teams will start doing it. We've seen other teams do the 6-2 splits. So I think it's a matter of time until we start seeing teams actually go, hang on, we're not going to start our strongest 15. What are our best combos? Where can we implement players most effectively? People will come off the bench, you know, in a good position. So yeah, I think they've just been very smart about it. So yeah, I'm sort of thinking about things not from a 15 perspective, but from a 23. What combos work and when? Timing as well. You know, if you can go injury free and everything can go to game plan again, and that's a loose plan because, you know, things happen. But I think they'll be the best sort of strategists almost.
Yeah, Dan, you know, a lot there. I think a good point that Wes is making is the fact that other teams are going with the 6-2 split as well. We've seen Australia do it. We've seen England do it. I mean, New Zealand did it last weekend. That's something people also seem to have forgotten about, because remember how much the Boks were chastised during the last World Cup at the 6-2 split. saying that it's dangerous because they're now bringing on these 6 big forwards and they're hammering against tired bodies and they hurt people and it's dangerous, etc., and that narrative has died away. And all of a sudden, last week we had a 6-2 split versus a 7-1 split. So look, it's tough to be a backline player at the moment, but I mean, the 6-2 split does seem to be we're moving towards such a physical era within real rugby, or despite all the 60-plus-year-olds talking about how it's gone soft. How much do you think? How many? I mean, do you think that the 6-2 split and sort of the use of that bench is going to be is going to be a main feature during the World Cup?
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know if we're going to see too many more 7-1 splits. Maybe probably even more likely maybe in a knockout game, because I think otherwise you're going to want to rotate players, and maybe the New Zealand game is a bit of a tester. But I think to kind of follow up with what Wes said, I think it's going to be game by game basis, right? So if you think of recent memory and bringing on a reserve for a very specific role, obviously the bomb squad does that, knowing winning penalties, getting 3 points later on in the game when people are tired, having fresh legs, that's going to win you test matches, right? We don't need bonus point tries. But 2 points that come to memory is the Malcolm Marks, who in the last 3 years up until 2023 didn't look like he could pay for a starting position because he was so good at turning over the ball at the end. Then you also think back to Morné Steyn. He wasn't our best, he wasn't our second best fly-off in the world, but he came to the British and Irish Lions series for a reason. He knew
and literally only played the last test.
Literally, he's there hyper specific. So the 6-2 split and how we identify like a nuance and a kink within, let's say, a Scottish side or a French side, where we're meeting in a semi-final or final, where we see their biggest weakness, I think will determine how we use our bench and the individual who is put in place for that. I think there still are a couple worrying signs. For example, I think Damien under the high ball can still get a lot better. And even the fact that we didn't score despite our insane pressure over the first 20 minutes until there was 13 down, and even then Sia only just scored by like a blade of grass. I think that there's still worries there. First half, right, in dominant patches, and we've seen what happens when we let the game get away with us. We're not very good at chasing. So it's going to be interesting, the mix between keeping up with the game, but then the small differentials that hopefully allow you to win by 3 points type of vibe.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And as I said, I think the whole game specific is a very interesting one, because now we're going into the World Cup, which is a game of cat and mouse. It's you especially for us, for example, we like to name our teams early. It looks like we'll be naming our teams 2 days before the game. Going back to that 48-hour margin. I think that's a mandate from World Rugby. That's at least the feedback I'm getting about it. So I think it's gonna be a very
Can I comment on that, Steve?
Yeah. So yeah.
Sorry, man. Yeah, I think like again, yes, obviously you study your opponents and you look for weaknesses, but at the end of the day, you've got a plan, and I think what the Boks are doing really well is they are or have been implementing their plan on other teams. Like you can see a steam train coming, so we can announce our team on Tuesday. You can see it coming, but you're going to struggle to stop the steam train. You know what I mean? Like, so I think I've been really happy with these early team announcements because, and because we're saying to the other teams here, this is our squad. Find the weakness, find your counter, do what you can. We're going to play our rugby, and if you beat us, good job. But so I'm quite happy that the Boks are just not. I don't think we're reacting too much to other teams. I think we know what we want to do, and I think you had said, Stevie, that the management team had told the Boks and said, this is kind of the team we're thinking for this game and in this game and in this game. So players kind of knew more or less where they were featuring. So there's been this long-term plan, and I think there'll still be that plan. And I think the management will be very open with them and saying, this is what we're going to try and do, and the other teams must just stop us.
And on that point, I mean, Chris, maybe you can expand on this. Do you think also there's a certain amount of, because they've tried so many different combinations, so many different teams, and we have seen different game tactics coming at different. Sometimes we've said that we've been a bit slow to react, and sometimes we haven't been able to adjust our tactics. But to say that we are the one-dimensional side we might have been a few years ago would be very far from the truth. And I do think that we're now in a situation where we can name the same 23 one week as the next week, but depending on who we're playing, be able to kind of tweak that game plan a little bit, which is what the best teams have been able to do over the years. They've been able to sit there saying, well, we've got our game plan, and 90% of our game plan will remain the same, but there's a small weakness there, and we back our 23 to be able to adjust and identify that weakness and exploit it. Do you think that with all the changes of the combinations, that could be the case now? That, we can name our side, and you can sit there saying, well, we assume they're going to play like this, but we are able to tweak it slightly just to, specifically for a certain opposition.
Yeah, I think we have adapted for sure. We aren't nearly as one-dimensional as we have been previously. That's for certain. I think definitely Sharks and Rassie, you can tell they're deep thinkers of the game, and they're thinking hard about the opponents, the team, working our strengths, their weaknesses. But this is the question, I've been saying, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not the coach.
Yet.
Yeah. But look at the game against Australia. Look at last year when Lebok was starting. Lebok isn't a Pollard. Like, he's an offload and fly half. He's not going to bash it up and give it to Dylan and bash it up. Like, we look different. Now, is that deliberate? Because I don't think Lebok was a deliberate inclusion to the team. But I think I don't think this was a deliberate way to go. And we've kind of got into this way of playing. And now it's like, maybe it's just like it's great because that's what I was trying to say. It's like it's great that looks like we can play this option, but I keep banging on. You do not see the Springboks play like they did the last two games, or every time the block is started, you don't see us play like that. And when Willemse went in a 10 against New Zealand as well, completely different. Also, heads up rugby player, but I think first receiver for Willemse is not the best. He needs to be out in a little bit more space. Second receiver, trust in somebody. So that's my whole point, because I'm still picking up Pollard's going to probably be in the Irish test, and Pollard doesn't look up and swing 20-meter passes and look for his buddies, and it's a completely different style. So this is what I was always fascinated to see, how the book would go against the All Blacks, how this more expansive offloading game, and we matched them and betted them, and we went for points. Like we went for the corner like they would in the first 10 minutes. We put the pressure on. We got the team to put pressure on, cause the penalties, cause the yellows, everything they used to do. So I just think it's a great place. As I said last week, like for me, that's why I'm very comfortable. Whoever plays, I'm trusting the team. And I think it's great that the world, like everyone now, isn't going to just expect typical Springbok rugby, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be very interesting if Pollard comes into the frame, what actually happens. I'm very, very curious to see, and then how we go.
Yeah, I think that Lebok chat is a very good one, because I think as I said, if Pollard was fit, he would have played the last few games. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think what for me is interesting is how certain players are playing with certain other players. We spoke about combinations. So, for example, and Dan, I'll put you on the spot here. Andre Esterhuizen has been fantastic in the last month. And ironically, a year ago, he came off of a really good Premiership season. But when he played for the Boks, he just couldn't quite bring the same thing to the Boks setup. Now there's a growing narrative that Lebok is unlocking Andre Esterhuizen, and that because he's an offloading flower half, he's really getting Andre Esterhuizen. He's getting the best out of Andre Esterhuizen. But and people are saying that Damien Dale-Lindy hasn't been as good, and yet go back to 2019, that Dale-Lindy Pollard combination and the way those two work together worked incredibly well. I also think, for example, we spoke about how important Billy LaRue is, and I still think he's the most important player in our backline. But to a certain degree, maybe his playmaking abilities aren't as pivotal when you've got a Lebok at flower half, because you've got a ball player at flower half, and maybe that kind of sometimes allows us to be able to play Willemse at fullback, because you're saying to Damien, right, we don't need you to be our primary playmaker. You will play as a kind of a secondary, even a third playmaker, but when Willemse plays compared to Billy LaRue, is Willemse carry the ball a lot more. He's got the step, he's got the pace, he's got that X factor to get around players. So it's interesting how the different players have almost brought other different players into the game. So now we go into the World Cup. You've got a Lebok. Dan, how much do you think you should be planning around the fact that that's now our access. You know, do you go and sit there saying, well, Esterhuizen looks so much better next to him than Damien Dealindi? We know what Damien Dealindi brings. He's been so reliable over the last 2 years, but Esterhuizen could be a better combination. How do you weigh up the what's been tried and tested and been reliable over the years versus what seems to be working now?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Steve. I think you're so right in saying there's such a knock-on effect, and we've spoken about parts of individuals' games that they bring to the fore. Mentioning Vidi with his distribution, whereas Damien's a bit more of a ball carrying fullback, and how that's unlocked or allowed based on the fly-off and the centre partnership. And I'm a big Andre Esterhuizen fan. I don't see our management replacing Damien Dealindi at this point, despite the performance. And what's great is if they do, or at least in the group stage, maybe they'll get 50-50. It'll be interesting to see who gets the Irish and Scotland games. I just don't see a world where Dealindi misses out on both of those and doesn't play knockout rugby, because that format is working. With that said, seeing how Andre Pollard comes back into the mix and how the combinations work, it does make it incredibly difficult to predict how they're going to go about this. I think it's an incredibly good problem to have, right? Two amazing 12s that are at close to both of the heights of their games, and with similar kind of capabilities, but can kind of use them in a lot of different ways. I mean, even seeing Andre Esterhuizen even putting a couple kicks through, something we don't necessarily see from Dealindi as much, which is exciting, and a different part of a game that we're seeing exploited. So I think it's going to start with the Pollard when he comes back, if he comes back, and then what the management wants to do. But I can't see Dealindi being put to one side by any means.
So I have another point there, Steve, as well, and I noticed this also on the game on Friday, and it goes back to Faf, because we could see all those driving balls. It was in the corner right where we were, and you could literally just see the same thing, and it was always the first runner bash, and Faf for me is about 0.8 of a second too slow to even make the
stopwatch
pass
shot
to the entire. No, but honestly, we were caught it. You could see New Zealand were expecting that. That's why they were defending. They knew it was coming, and their technique was actually brilliant. They were getting they knew Faf was going to first runner bash, and you had Moody and you had Aaron, so all out there in space, and it was never ever. You could see Faf. You could see he was never going that direction. So I think the point that I would make, if we're going to talk about combinations, is if we are going to play Pollard, I would really rather have Hendrickse at 9, because Hendrickse does seem to make better, quicker options. That's just my opinion. I just think he's more effective. So I think that would help Pollard. But if we want to talk about how the Springboks are playing, if we have Faf, Pollard, and Dealindi, we're not going to see a Springbok rugby team like we've seen the last few weeks. There's no that access does not look up and look for pass first. So we've got to be realistic, right? If it's those guys in the starting, we're back to the book rugby, and then probably book rugby 60 minutes, bomb squad, some pace, and we let loose in the 20, which has been effective as well, right? So
yeah,
hopefully that will work too.
We wait and see what's going to happen with the whole part of the thing. As I said, as it stands, still it's going to be an interesting way, isn't it? We're now going to the World Cup, and we're going to sit there saying, well, when's he going to get called up? Or when's he going to get called up? Or when's he going to get called up? Because that's kind of what everybody still kind of assumes.
But in the press conference, Steve, Jacques said in 2 weeks he's going to be able to play 80 minutes. That's basically saying he's playing against Ireland or Tonga.
But the problem is now, for example, is that he's not actually in Corsica. He's actually back at Leicester Tigers training. So it's,
really?
Yeah.
Okay,
so there's a picture in Leicester Tigers training. He's back this week, but he was kicking for poles and stuff like that. So yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting concept, because I mean, in theory, if everyone gets to the entire World Cup uninjured, in theory he doesn't come in. So it's a very interesting position to be in.
It's so interesting, because I still think even with the box form, if we have a semi-final, people are going to probably be like Pollard, bringing what we know.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
It's so
but
easy to fall back on that.
Yeah. I mean, I back Lubbock. I back him. You can see, I see Swayze de Brand did a really good insert on him and how he's changed his angle from Wales to New Zealand because of his style, and that's what squared him up a bit, and he got straighter. So I back him. But I think if Pollard is available and ready to go, so interesting to see what they do.
It is a difficult one because you as the Springboks been fantastic, but how do you not play your World Cup winning British and Irish Lions winning?
I got a feeling because
been there for the last 2 World Cups and stuff.
Because I said to Jacques, I said to give some kudos to Lubbock, and he didn't give it to Lubbock. He went on about Pollard and Willemse and who else has played 10, and so I'm very interested in headspace. I'm not quite convinced that it's even Jacques. He is a Jacques number 1 choice. It's just at the moment this is where we are. So. Well, we'll see if we get through the quarters.
Yeah, that's actually, to be fair, he did come to Liebach's defense 2 weeks ago, I think, when he kept arcing on as well as 6 kicks, and he said, "No, but missing 5 is not too bad." And then we said, "Sorry, what?" And then he said, "Well, he says if he helps us score 5 tries, he helps us score 5 tries."
But,
so
I
think that whole fly-half thing is going to be it's going to be like the cornerstone of all the chat. But I want to move a little bit away from the fly-half, Wes, and I want to talk about the soon-to-be best rugby player in the world in Kane Moody, and the fact that his professional game. First at 13 ever. Look, it did help that New Zealand weren't busy running around. Rico Wani wasn't getting a lot of great ball and stuff. But I mean, for 1 second, he looked like a 20-year-old playing in what I think is 7th test and playing his first ever professional game at 13.
Yeah, it turns out Boyle and Landberg plays for the All Blacks.
just a different breed at the moment, and he's in such great form. And I mean, crazy to say that 7 games in, but he's had a fantastic start to the box, his Bok career, and long may it last, and long may he keep this form. So I've got nothing but praise for Moody, and I'm sure he will probably look at the game and see things that he could have improved on. These are, how professional these guys are. But obviously disappointing he didn't get to score that try. I thought he was still on the maul there. I thought he was still bound. And therefore, I thought still onside. But I do recognise I am a Springbok supporter, so the bias was coming in there. And I think just about every South African, whether you're a rugby fan or not, wanted him to score that try because it was phenomenal. But no, I mean, just kudos to the young man.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see whether he's now firmly put himself in that selection that makes for Scotland. Because Chris, how do you drop him?
No, we said this 3 weeks ago as you and I, Stevie. I said that Moody doesn't miss a Springbok test for the next 10 years. I'm completely happy with that. And he looked fine. I was just saying, I do love watching live, and if you're in a good position, you do see far more than you see on TV. He was great, and that try looked so good. I think I was speaking with other people about 13s and what they offer, and actually 13s making line breaks, and sometimes maybe that's a question about arm. I'm not saying arm wouldn't have scored that try. I mean, he's certainly capable. But what Moody did in that situation is what I would want my 13 to do, like Jacques Fourie could do in the past, and really good 13s. Nah, I put a poll on X now, whatever, Twitter, who should play 13. For me, it's Moody. You got to play your best player. That's sorry for Kriel, but Kriel can just keep playing the role he's been playing.
It's a huge shot when you think about how good Kriel was 2 weeks ago.
If I would pick Moody over Kriel.
I'll just put Moody at
easy.
I'll just put Moody at 14 and put him on Sol.
No, I'd rather have Colby on the field and Moody. Why the hell would I?
You can still do that.
Kriel
you can go 11-14 and Kriel at 13.
Yeah.
And poor Kriel Aronson, he continues to score more than a try and matches to go and watch him the sides.
No, you're right. He has to be there. He has to be on the field. He's just too good. And he's never let anyone down. He's just every time he plays, you go, wow, you notice him. He does something good. He's clever. Time. Oh, it's just great. I love it.
I think as you said there, Chris, I think it's important, and maybe Captain cautious back here, but there will come a time, a moment, a period, not doom and gloom, but where he will stuff up. He will let someone down. He'll miss a tackle. He'll have a bad game.
2035, dude. I don't even want to talk about this stuff now.
130th cap.
Playing against second British and Irish Lions tour,
Yeah, no, I think my point is just, that will come at some point, but not to then write him off when it does. And just
Yeah.
to I think we're
of
very
course.
keen to do that. Where
Hang on, so are you,
know,
are you
I'm not saying
implying
that
the
we
South
would,
African public might write off a player after they make a mistake? Doesn't sound like us at all.
But
no, I must be thinking of someone else.
But wasn't there a few people on this panel that were in tears that Arm wasn't going to be at the World Cup, and now we don't hear about him anymore? What's going on? What's going on there, Stevie?
Hey, I always said I back my boy Kriel. I always said there's a player there. I always said
Yeah.
not the Kanya up. There's nothing wrong with him. He then basically retired the Welsh centre pairing. Back my boy. I reckon he starts against Scotland, and I'm very happy if he does. Because that Hooper Lockwood combination keeps me up at night, to be honest. But yeah,
The Scotland game? The Scotland game?
Yeah, no, that.
Yeah.
But let's move a little bit away from the box now, because we have we have to talk about the 45 minutes. I want to talk a little bit about two things. One of them being how England go from World Cup contenders in the final in 2019 to basically a tier 2 nation going into this World Cup. And I want to talk about how Fiji are coming in as a team that looks like a proper tier 1 contending, not World Cup necessarily contenders, but as teams to be reckoned with. Chris, you were obviously there on the ground.
I was at Twickenham. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
Yes,
So you were on the ground. Before we talk
sleep
about
at the stadium.
before we talk about
you just
Fiji,
slept there in the press box.
yeah, and just asking.
I got to mention I was in the press box in the gantry next to some of the big dogs. Yeah. I've just got to keep just reminding you that. Yes. Sorry.
I thought you were one of the big dogs. Come on, man, Chris.
I was.
But Chris, I'm gonna go to you about England, and then I want to go to Dan about Fiji. But Chris, England.
Mm-hmm.
A week ago we talked about and the fact that what is going on, and Borthway's got lots of issues and stuff like that. And we talked about can he turn them into a World Cup, not like a contending team, but a team that can put up a bit of fight. They then lost to Fiji at home. It's crisis mode, isn't it?
It is. I don't know. There's something seriously wrong with that team. Like, you could see it. They actually started very well. They actually looked much better first 10 minutes. They're playing much better, and then the rain came, and I wonder if they thought themselves, I don't know if it changed their mentality. They thought, well, the rains of Fiji don't like to play in the rain. We'll just take it from here, see it through. But Fiji just grew into the game, and it rained pretty hard for like 20 minutes. There was lightning going on above the ground. It's quite surreal, actually. But England just... They're literally like headless chickens. They're like, that's what I can say. Like, you look around, there's just no one's. I like Courtney Laws, but
it's pure individuality, that whole
team. Yeah, and it's a leadership and culture thing there. That's what I can tell, because they've got the players.
I think that's the biggest thing. That there's good players there, like really. There are a couple of world-class players on that side.
But Moro Chojo is a third of the player that he used to be. He's not making, and his attitude is also very weird. Like in the warm-ups as well, he was just like kind of like walking in front of Marcus Smith and them kicking, like not even paying attention. Like there's a very strange vibe in that team. There's something, just they're either not playing, they're not believing in something, they're scared. The word scared's being used, like they're nervous and scared. It looks like they don't believe in what they're supposed to be doing. That's what I feel. They're not invested in what they're trying to achieve. There's no way. Marcus Smith came on, and Marchant brought some energy. You could see Marcus Smith and him were trying to get, because there's no energy. It was just like, bleh. But there was a leadership. It wasn't coming from the leaders like Atojo and Laws and Marla. It wasn't. Marla was subdued. Something's wrong, massively wrong. I don't know if people saying they're one win away from clicking and coming back together. I don't see it. I don't know how they come back from this, or how they're going to have a World Cup. But they're a draw. They could easily run into the semi-finals. So let's see.
Yeah, I don't know. They don't know who to look to. It seems
exactly that. Yeah.
When the times are going tough, is it Ellis Gaines? It almost should be a Toje, right?
Yeah.
You become that guy. And even Courtney Laws, I think he's quite a selfless player. Leaves it all out there. But there's no one who, I just think of the equivalent of a Sia Khaleesi, who can tell you to keep quiet. And I'm going to speak on behalf of the team, and then we'll settle this afterwards. And no matter what, like I have your back before anything else. I'm doing your interest.
Yeah, you know what? And he just doesn't say the headless chicken. What I could see, was trying to see, is when things were happening, laws, the leaders, they weren't looking at each other. It's like they were actually looking at the coaching. So it's like they are expected to do something, and it's not. They don't have. Then it's not on them to make some big decisions, or they're scared to make a decision. You just don't see a cohesion and a team and leadership all in the field taking that team together. Something's wrong. Like that's not how it works. Like, these guys are too good. They're our leaders. They've proven it before, and they're completely on another planet at the moment.
And they're two big leaders of Farrell and what's it called? Their coach, who are two drill sergeants, right? These are guys who are like living and dying by like, this isn't a time to come and test out things or feel confident within yourself. You have a job and you do it. There's no flexibility. So now all of a sudden they are, put in these situations where, as you said, with the players who you see in the names on the field, they should be fine, but now it's not going right. So they don't know who to look to. They don't know how to be.
As soon as they're under pressure, it's like they crumble.
To follow. And these like two incredibly strict, like the process driven individuals. And I don't even think that's a dig at Farrell, because I don't think I think he should make their starting 15. I just don't know if it makes sense why he's the captain under Borswick.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, I don't know if you guys noticed, for the first time the press they asked Borthwick to his face, do you actually believe you're good enough to have this job? Was the first they started to ask that question. Obviously he was answered, but that's what people are saying now. Are you out of your depth? I mean, I've been saying this for a while.
When the British press turns, it gets nasty very quickly. But I think yeah.
It was also just give nothing away to Fiji. Bloody impressive.
That's what I want to bring.
Bloody impressive.
I've never throw this because Wesley was on the watch.
Yeah, throw it to Wesley. Yeah,
because we talk about the fact that England just look directionless. They look disciplined. There's just some stuff not happening. Fiji looked like the side they've always threatened to become. They've always looked like the side where you sit there going, the difference between your top sides and sometimes your tier 2 nations, stuff like that, are the fact that they've got some world-class players, they've got some really good moments in them, but they don't have the mentality, the discipline to be able to consistently put together an 80-minute performance. This Fijian side look a little bit different, don't they?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there with consistency. We've seen the tier 2 nations show moments of brilliance, maybe a couple of phases, maybe 10, 20 minutes, but then it's always the majority of the game where potentially discipline lets them down, and then the tier 1 sides, whatever, come in and do what they do. However, this past Saturday, we just saw Fiji keep doing the right thing. They were making the correct calls. They took points when they were an offer. They went to the corner when it was the good thing to do. They kept their heads. There's always going to be penalties. Best side of the world gives away penalties, and there was, stupid penalties even at that. But it was almost like England were waiting for the Fiji of old to show up. Okay, if we just keep waiting, they'll get cuck eventually, and then we can try and score some points. But Fiji were having none of it. So no, I mean, a huge credit to the coaching staff and the players there, that side as well, because it's combination seems to be the theme of tonight. That's what it's about. It's about player combinations. It's about player coach combinations, management, and I think just very quickly to comment on the England side, I think that's what's missing. You guys hit it. It's culture, leadership, and management. None of that is working in the England camp right now, and it's a horrible place to be. Just quickly, Chris, because I think the Bok and other nation press can be tough, but I think the English press is something else, and we know this no matter what it's about. It can be politics, it can be stupid social media stuff, it can be sports, but the English press are horrific, and that creates this space of you spoke about the word scared, but you must have the ability to stuff up. You've got to feel safe enough to take a chance and mess it up completely, knowing that your mates will have your back and the country will go, you know what, probably not the right call, but at least he tried it. He'll learn from this. Where I feel like there's none of that safeness in the England camp. Everyone is on edge. Everyone is shit scared of making the wrong decision. No one feels confident to do anything. So what do? They just do nothing, and they lose to Fiji, who is a very good side. That we shouldn't say it like it's a bad thing. I don't want to say that, because Fiji were a class side, but England will be playing rugby because they're doing nothing.
But also the thing of the culture. Obviously, it was my first time I took it for an England game, but the press in the open area, they didn't send any players down. And because I rushed off from the main one, because it was all new for me, and the press away, they sent down George Ford, who they sent to one guy, who they obviously is predetermined. And they said it's the first time in their history as media that England didn't send. So so Borthwick's not even allowing them to speak to the press. So they also made a point. You don't see England comments or interviews even during the week. He's banned them from talking to the press in general. It's weird what's going on there.
Bizarre tweet, whatever you call it now. Bizarre. What do you call tweets now? Do you call them X's?
So posts.
Guys, help me out.
They're posts, yeah.
But one
so
one,
old. Okay.
No, sorry, go please.
No, so you can see that frustration. Now, I don't know if that was like he's kind of doing the underdog thing, or if it's just a frustration of, yep, that's it, we're done. This is it. We're out. Like we're finished.
The one positive was Mitchell, Alex Mitchell scrum off. He looks great.
He's a great player.
He was hands and head above everyone else in the field, and that's another one. This game
because he hasn't been around long enough for him to be affected by the environment. So basically, what they need to do is start bringing people in, just ad hoc, and just before the toxicity chiefs do, come in, put a big game, get out.
Whole new side, zero caps, caps for the team that
Yeah.
starts.
Yeah, but so there was the only positive. And like I say, where the baby Regenge as well, it's so ineffective compared to even last year in Australia. He was rampaging through the Aussies. Yeah.
Right. Now speaking of rampaging, Chris.
Yeah, I think you also have to.
Sorry,
What's great is you also.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't know. I was just saying, just the last final note, just to give kudos to the Fijians, is that, where South Africa's credited a lot is we stick to our system, we believe in what we do, and that's we're going to come physically and you're going to have to beat us in our game. Fiji have never tried to move away from what they know they are good at. And now what's really exciting is that with the right type of system, coaching staff, and kind of game plan, they are being able to use that to, I think, beat obviously a very weak tier 1 nation, but I'd love to see them continue and get out the groups and even show a bit of fight in a quarterfinal. But yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I do think we keep talking about the fact this might be the most competitive World Cup ever, and I think that we are seeing 4 sides who are quite clearly, and I actually almost those got into that. We're seeing sort of 4 to 5 sides who are very settled, very good top class sides. We're seeing a couple of big dogs who are playing awful rugby, and we're seeing a couple of previously tier 2 nations who are suddenly sort of coming to the fore. So I'm very excited. Speaking of excited, I want to try and make some money this weekend, Chris. And therefore, we want to move to our BoyleSports betting segment. First of all, before we talk about what happened this weekend, or what's happening this weekend, rather. What happened last weekend, Chris?
Yeah, not a lot. Very, very disappointing. Well, first off, Otago came in nicely. It was actually the first game on that treble, but Canterbury, who were the form team, they were putting teams away. They were at home. Wellington had made a few changes, and Wellington often do actually play well against Canterbury, and they came and they threw us out there. Didn't mean anything with the Tasman game. It was a draw, full time. I don't know if you guys know, NPC goes to extra time these days. So Tasman, I think, squeezed over in extra time. And to be honest, I haven't checked Boyle's conditions, whether they pay out at night 80 minutes or extra time. Usually it probably would have been 80 minutes, which means we would have probably lost that bet anyway. So not a good one. After some few weeks of some nice momentum, we got into a nice return on investment, but that took a knock. It took 2.5 units off our total, but we're still looking healthy. So can't win all the time. So we'll take that one on the chin. And as happened before, Stevie, we've just clawed it back and made some more. So we'll do that
for the next
couple of weeks.
We've got a long book up ahead of us. I'm not panicking.
Exactly.
I'm not panicking.
Okay. Well, that's why I want to just call out now this weekend, guys. It's only NPC and French rugby. NPC is not said, as you can see, we lost last week on NPC, which was my first NPC punt, I think. Well, we had Tasman early on, but I haven't been calling NPC well at all this season, so that's why I've been staying away from it. So NPC games this weekend and French, but I'm going to, we've spoken about this before, leans. Lean is what a punter will give if they have a feel, they're thinking about the game, but they haven't actually made an official punt or put official money on it. But they give it as an opinion, just for information for people who want to know or follow, if they want to follow on their own accord. But we won't put that to the record, right? So for this weekend, I've called out 2 leans. I've got for tonight's game. So this actually starts in 55 minutes. It's Province versus Nevers in the Pro D2. Gone for an over 46.5 total. Yeah. I mean, Pro D2 generally you wouldn't say is a high scorer in league, but it has been more points lately in the first couple of rounds. And I like this stuck out to me because actually Province have scored 44 points themselves in the last 2 games. So that's a stat that stands out. But you can't say that it means obviously will happen again. You never know what will happen on the day. And also these 2 teams, when they play each other, looks like it can get a little bit of dogfight. So this trend could turn around on this game. But in saying that, I looked at the weather conditions, look good. So 44 looks low. It feels low. This looks like a game that could creep up to close to the 50s. But yeah, not very confident, and that's why I don't want to put it to the record. But that's just why my opinion on that market. And then Northland plus 6.5 tomorrow. That home to Hawke's Bay. Hawke's Bay are pretty good. They're 3rd on the log. They're having mixed performances like most of the NPC teams this season. Northland started with a hammer and a Canterbury, but they've been quite solid. And they're at home to Hawke's Bay. And Hawke's Bay haven't won away from home in I think 5 or 6 games for one. And when they do win, they don't win big. And so giving Northland 7 points here is a decent punt, I think. So these are leans. If you do fancy a bet tonight or tomorrow, so it's not very strong, and that's why we won't add it to a record. But yeah, International World Cup is one of my favorite events. So we've got lots of games in the next couple of weeks to get our teeth stuck into, which we certainly will. So let's take it easy this week. Let's leave the record healthily where it is. But if you want to have a bit of a punt this weekend, these would be the ones that stand out at the moment. Again, like I said, on Thursday, not all the markets for all the weekend's games are out. So this is what I'm given with what I'm working with, what's available. So
then, Chris, obviously, these are leans. So if somebody were to make a punt on this, you'd probably recommend the confidence value at low 1 to 2 units, I assume.
Exactly. Yeah. If I was going to punt, I would have been like a unit or less than a unit. Yeah.
Less than a unit. Okay, so maybe like 0.5 or 0.75.
Yeah. Just for interest, yeah. But I don't want to. We said this before. I don't want to force a bet out if I don't need to. Let's keep it quality over quantity.
Now, well, I'm backing you. In fact, I'm going to back your Province Nevers one there. So I'm going to throw a unit on that, and just I'm going to put some jeopardy out there in it. So let's see if that one hits. But yeah, as you said, there's so much that is happening over the next month from a rugby perspective. Obviously, this is all brought to you by BoyleSports, so go and get yourself an account so that you can be part of the official record. I'm part of the official record, so I've got that 64% return on investment. Happy customer over here. You're going to see me on my Bentley soon. Obviously, people, if you are a sports betting fan and you enjoy it, Chris will be live tomorrow with his betting show, which is non just rugby specific. I think we're betting on everything. I believe there's some table tennis coming up. I think that there's League of Legends. I think there's Marcus League of Legends over on Boyles. There's biathlon. So and a very interactive show as well tomorrow. Chris, any cool things that you're looking at going tomorrow for your betting show?
No, but yeah, it was the first one we did last week, so it's only the first of hopefully a nice long journey and building this into a cool show for the fans. Like we said, we want to keep it fan specific, not just about me. Last week I did a manual poll in the comments. We did draw out a best bet, which was Nottingham Forest to win. So I think I saw comments some guys had followed, so that's what we want. So we'll use the software. We'll get some vote in there for best bets. I'll give out my one, and like I said, we might talk about the ladder challenge. At the moment, there's not enough markets maybe for ladder challenge, but we'll see. And yeah, as I said, we'll grow it. Yeah, get your guys' feedback. So join in the conversation. Tell me what you really fancy for the weekend, and we'll try build something together. And yeah, hopefully make some money together. And yeah, and have a good weekend, Panton weekend.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. Gentlemen, we've gone over the hour mark because the chat is, there's just so much to talk about it. I think we only talked about the Springboks, England, and Fiji. We didn't even really break down the All Blacks and the fact that, they're back to crisis mode, apparently. So we could be talking for hours, but unfortunately that is time. So I'm going to say a very big thank you to the two from the UK in the middle there. Wes coming to you live from Bots. Nice little sort of global panel. It's a bit weird that with a majority South African channel, I'm the only one actually down here. And ironically, 2 weeks today, I won't be down here. I'm putting up Chris here and saying within 2 weeks' time, I'll actually be on a plane over to France, which is going to be a lot of fun. But during the World Cup, you're going to be seeing all these faces on the channel. We're going to be seeing, we've got watch-alongs, we've got fan forums, we've got any bit of content you can think of that is coming to you. Our official World Cup coverage kicks off on Monday with the launch of a daily Rugby World Cup news show. We've got brand new studios, brand new look and feel of the entire channel. It's going to be absolutely mental for 2 months. So I hope you guys have bought some data, upgraded your fiber, and make sure you're not going to miss any of the action. Gentlemen, please have a fantastic weekend. I see Dan's already having a beer to warm up for the weekend. So hopefully the lagers are going to be flowing across the globe. And chaps, thank you so much.
Stevie, I assume my tickets to Marseille, they're on the way, right? They should be arriving tomorrow.
They're in the post. It is the South African
post.
I
thought so. Yeah.
If it doesn't,
I just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Okay.
They're my bad. We are relying on the South African service delivery. So I hold my hands up if they arrive or not. Cool. Thanks so much, chaps, for your last time. Everybody in the comments, I'm sorry that we didn't get to everybody. We had so much to talk about. But we will be live again next week, Thursday, which is going to be a really cool fan forum. Obviously, the day before the World Cup does start. And tomorrow, very quickly, we will be publishing all the details for our official fan park for the Springbok game on Sunday, the 10th of September. We will be at Kyalami Country Club, a whole in-studio live broadcast from there, or an audience, and lots of very cool things. So details of that will be going up on the channel tomorrow as well. Everybody, keep well, keep safe. To the panel, thank you very much. To everybody in the chat, thank you very much. And we will see you guys all next weekend.